Good morning. It is Thursday, December 4th, 9:40. Hope everyone's doing good. Hey, I want to just take a minute or two to thank and welcome aboard. Gotten a bunch of new subscribers the last week and a half or so. So really appreciate the love, and I get a, I have a core group of people that have been on this been a part of this whole wild circus for a while, and they've been incredibly supportive, and they're always commenting on the videos, and super super cool. And so can't really do any of this crazy stuff without you guys. So I really appreciate the support. Super awesome. I've been kind of experimenting with doing some live videos, and that's been a lot of fun. Um, and I've been, lately I've been working on some new music for Quantum, which has been a lot of fun. I've also been, even though there's still a little bit of time until the show happens, I've been getting ready for the show with Travis Lloyd, which I'm really really excited about at Hey Sailor on the 19th. So I've been working on those tunes for for the set. Typically, what I do with the band is with Quantum is it's usually when I don't have any shows or gigs with the band, I usually just work on the tunes. I'm always tweaking stuff, and then if I'm writing music, I'll usually focus a lot on that. And then when we have a show or some shows coming up, I'll usually just like run sets, and I'll usually just basically run all the tunes that I have, whether they're older tunes or newer tunes, and try to get them up to speed to like where they could be played live, or get them ready for the show or shows. And one of the a big process of the whole thing for me is getting the tunes to a point to where I can play them, hopefully comfortably live, and then the transitions, trying to transition from song to song, which into itself is really really hard because I never use backing tracks. I never have presets of things that I've done before. I usually try to do everything. I mean, at the end of the day, I do it. I do it this way. I never have pre-recorded tracks or preset things. It's all like in the moment and in the live setting. So, and I don't usually ever do conventional in the way of like how most bands or groups have, say, a set list. You work on a set list and then you rehearse it. Like say you're playing 6 or 7 songs and you just kind of run that set. We don't typically do that. I tried to do that, but it always felt like it was never really matching the vibe of that particular gig. Like whether there's only a few people there, or whether there's a lot of people there, whether it's more of a dance, vibe, or it's more of an ambient vibe. So I don't do set lists. I just kind of pull the tunes that I feel like, you know, are are appropriate for that moment or those in those minutes or in that time frame. And sometimes that can be really, dangerous because it can cause a train wreck. Other times I think it can be really cool because it can be really spontaneous. And we also, so it's always back and forth with that. And there, we always have that balance, or try. I always try to strive for that balance of where we have a lot of tunes and songs that are really worked out and fleshed out, and where I put a lot of focus on. But we also do a lot of improv live. We also do a lot of kind of winging it by the seat of our pants, even though we have all of these songs. So there's been times in the past of we generally where we haven't done a lot of improv. We just kind of play the tunes in the structures of the songs themselves. The structure is actually, from really all of the tunes, the structure is actually very loose too. So there is always room for that to happen within the tune. which I kind of wanted to be. I kind of wanted that to be a thing. And also, and so there was a time where we would just play the songs and have a little bit maybe of improv, kind of a thing in the tunes themselves. But outside of that, as far as like creating something new and just improvising and totally winging it, there was a little time where we didn't do that. But this past summer and the last batch of gigs that we've had, been doing a lot of that. And I really enjoy that because, again, it can go off the trail. It can go off the rails any moment, and there's times where it's not successful, and there's times where it kind of, chases its own tail. But there's also moments and times where I feel like it really is working, and that's what inspires it, But I love that challenge. So, so anyway, um, and speaking of music, I've been doing some shows recently on soundtracks for some of my favorite exploitation movies, and that's been a lot of fun because those movies, again, exploitation movies are my jam. It always feels like, I don't know, it gives me this warm, tingly sensation when I watch these movies, even if they're fucked up and weird, which is mostly, that most of the time that's the case, and that I guess says a lot for me, but. They're comforting and they're fun and it's like great healthy escapism from like sometimes the stupid world that we live in. And I just really dig these movies because there's this feeling of the filmmakers for a lot of these movies are not taking themselves too damn seriously. And that's something that turns me off a lot about Hollywood movies. Sometimes where, like, I love, again, I just did a big show on, or two big shows on the last Mission Impossible movie. And then I also did a big show on the Brad Pitt F1 the movie film. And so I still love big blockbuster, big fireworks, Michael Bay movies, big Hollywood productions. I still love those movies, and most of the time when I go to the theater, those are the kinds of films I end up seeing. But it's funny because as I've gotten older and as I've gotten more and more into the sleazy world of exploitation movies, I can only take big Hollywood movies to at limited doses now. It's funny. If I watch like three or four kind of big blockbuster Hollywood movies, even if they're really, really good, I get super fatigued. It's really weird. I get super fatigued in a way of like, man, I need a break. I need to unplug, or I need some levity. That's one thing I find that happens is that most Hollywood films, and again, I'm not knocking them, but there's so many good ones because there are so many good ones. But most of the time, there's no levity. There's not like that, everything seems like, especially with TV shows, everything is so like, everything has to be so dramatic and so serious and so dark and so cynical, or it's just like everything is so, you know, fucking serious all the time. And I just feel like with exploitation movies, even if I'm watching a movie that is, maybe pretty disturbing, but there's still like this, I don't know, cheesy factor about it, and something, I don't know, almost comical about it, that is still like, that is, gives me a sense of levity and fun. So that's one thing. Like, I can watch exploitation movies all day, all night long. Like, I never get tired of it. But with big Hollywood movies, if I watch 4 or 5, it gives me a headache. And I'm not knocking these movies, but I just need something that is a little bit dirtier, a little bit more, raunchy, a little bit more gory, a little bit more, just anti-Hollywood, if you will. I don't know. I've said this many, many times before, but I did a podcast a couple of years ago with Matthew Littlefield, and he had asked me about that. What is it about those movies that you love? And I just said, for me, it's like putting on a punk rock record. It's just really raw. It's just really kind of nasty and going for it. And with all of these movies, there's, you know, a lot of these films don't have uh, very big budgets whatsoever. They're really small, but there's so much imagination. That's the thing I love. Like trying to do and achieve so much with barely any money. And I really, really appreciate that. So today's show, this is a movie that I have talked about before, or I've done a show on, and this movie for me is a film that just gets better and better every time I see it, and that is uh, Burial Ground. I'm gonna be talking mainly today because I have done a show on this movie, but I'm gonna be talking about the director of this film. This is going to be a special about Andrea Bianchi. He is the director, the Italian director of this film. And I want to talk obviously about this movie, but I wanted to make this show a focus on Andrea Bianchi, who is just he was such a powerhouse of a filmmaker, and I think he is. I think he's actually still alive. Again, I just watched this movie. I again last night. This movie has crossed that threshold for me where I've seen it so many times. I I can't count the amount of times. I couldn't give you a number now of how many times I've actually seen this movie. This movie again. I'm a huge fan of zombie films. I mean, who really isn't? Zombie films have obviously gotten so huge. And all of the incredible Italian films, Lucio Fulci, George Romero, of course, really kicked off a lot and influenced. I mean, beyond at this point, beyond his films have gone beyond anything to influence the massive genre of zombie films. To where you have The Walking Dead that's been on for 20 years or whatnot, so many newer zombie movies that have come out, all the 28 Days Later films. I mean, the list is endless. I always go back to the old school ones, the Lucio Fulci films and Bruno Mattei and all the classic old school shit. But I have to say that this, and again, I've seen this movie so many times, and I remember seeing this as a kid a handful of times, and then because I remember as a kid seeing the artwork, because it really jumped out at me when it was the age of VHS. I mean, it's got this cover. It's got a really beautiful slip cover, kind of like newer, upgraded art. And this was put out by Severin, but it's amazing, amazing. But the original artwork, I just think is so amazing. And I remember as a kid seeing this movie on the shelf, and I was just like, "Holy shit, this looks amazing!" And I did see this movie a handful of times back in the day, but when I got this again on Blu-ray, it was like a whole new experience, a whole new experience. And again, I think that this movie, again, I'm a big zombie movie fan, and I don't know, there's something about Burial Ground where I think, to say what is your favorite movie in a particular genre is, obviously saying a lot. But and I have quite a few zombie films in my collection, but Burial Ground is kind of the movie I keep coming back to. And I don't know, I kind of feel like this movie might be my favorite zombie movie of all time. It's just so it's just so fucking nasty. This movie is so like dirty and gross and filthy. It's really sleazy too. Like there's a couple of moments in this film, a couple of scenes that are just like so fucked up, and that are really sleazy. And I don't want to, if anybody out there hasn't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. I think it has some of the greatest practical effects, and it's got the sound effects in this movie are just so gross and disgusting. Um, The music for this film is absolutely astounding. And what I love about this movie, again, I've always talked about this, but for me, one of the key or the key selling point for me to love a movie is the atmosphere. And if a film, even if it's really shitty, like bad acting or even a bad screenplay, but if the movie has really good atmosphere, 95% of the time I will be into the movie and actually like it. But this movie is like the epitome of atmosphere. It's so awesome. It's all set in this really creepy old mansion, in this beautiful kind of ravine. And the thing that's so cool about this movie is the pacing. Like there's so much tension and creepiness and atmosphere. And the gore in this movie is like through the roof. I mean, it's got some of the greatest practical effects. And I don't know of any other like zombie movies really per se that are this sleazy. This movie is so filthy and sleazy. Like you kind of almost feel like you need to take a shower after you watch it. It's just so badass. But as far as like kind of the sexual content of the movie or the sleaziness, I can't really think of any other, zombie movies that necessarily have that kind of thing in it. But the thing that's so amazing about this film is the pacing. Because literally 5, maybe 10 minutes into the film, you're off to the races. Like you're in it to win it. And it's it's an incredibly suspenseful film, and it just pulls you in, and there's so much cool shit established as far as the tension, the practical effects. The characters are really great. I think the story's really good. Actually like the characters. And this movie is so raw. It's just so like it feels like it gets under your fingernails. And that's really it's all due to Andrea Bianchi, who is the director of this masterpiece. And so I want to talk about a lot of the movies he's done, and I know I've seen other films, but this movie, Burial Ground, is just so goddamn good that it merits doing a show just on Andrea Bianchi as a director. Of course, Burial Ground, this film that I'm mainly talking about today, came out in 1981. Prime time, it's the prime time decade for all things exploitation, especially horror and especially zombie films. I mean, it's something that can never be. Zombie films are still being made. I'm not a big fan. Like a lot of people are all into, and I might review it. I've never done a show. I've never done any shows on those films. But as far as like newer zombie shows or movies, a lot of people, and the third one came out this year, and I had no interest in seeing it. But a lot of folks are really, really into the 28 Days Later franchise. And, I'm not a fan of those films. I have this first one. Cillian Murphy's in it, which is pretty awesome. I love him as an actor. And that movie, 28 Days Later, definitely has some cool, I don't know, like, it does feel, the way it's shot, Danny Boyle directed it, of course, who did Trainspotting, which is, that movie is amazing, and that's a masterpiece. Danny Boyle is a really great director. I also really love a film he did years ago called Sunshine, which is a really good sci-fi movie. Pretty trippy. I would like to revisit that movie. But I'm not a real big fan of 28 Days Later. I never really liked it. I remember seeing it in the theater. I have it on DVD, and I haven't watched it in a long time. But I never really liked that movie. And the thing that's cool about it, there are some good things about it, is it's kind of done in this, it feels like, I don't know, like a real world scenario, or it almost has like a like you're watching a documentary on the end of the world, or like that the zombie apocalypse is really happening. It's very, it's kind of got that a little bit of that classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe where everything feels really real, and you're watching a documentary or something. But I don't like the way I never really liked the way the actual zombies were handled. I just thought, I don't know. Well, it sounds kind of funny, but I like zombies. For me, I like zombie action when the zombies are, when it's really atmospheric and they're really creepy. And I love the kind of the slow moving, menacing zombies. I don't really like the zombies of where they're like these crazed kind of rabid animals on steroids, or they're on, a ton of they've taken a bunch of speed. I'm not really into that. I like I love that's what I mean. One of the reasons I love Lucio Fulci films, and especially George Romero films is typically a lot of those zombies have this like way of moving that is just an extra gives you an extra layer of creepiness, and they're more they're more intimidating, they're more frightening. And I just love when that kind of presentation of zombies, and Burial Ground is all about that. Like there's so much atmosphere, and the zombie creatures in this movie are just so menacing, and they you can see them coming slowly from afar, and to me that just gives, and nothing is stopping them, and it gives it so much more tension. With 28 Days Later, it is, there everything is coming at you a mile a minute, and I just feel like it leaves me wanting something that is more slow paced, that has can put me in a place where there's more room for there to be, uh, where more tension can be built. And I feel like 28 Days Later doesn't really have that. Even though I do love Cillian Murphy, it does. I love the way it's shot in some ways, but it just doesn't have that rich atmosphere that a movie like this. And those movies are really huge. And Danny Boyle is kind of arguably bigger now in his career because of those movies. And then also The Walking Dead, very good show to a point. I I think that show is so overrated and is so overbloated and has been on for way too fucking long. And I just got tired of it and I got exhausted of it from it. So I'm always, when it comes to zombies, zombie shows and zombie movies, and there's also, a bunch of other zombie movies that are pretty good. I think Shaun of the Dead, I think that's an amazing film. So anyway, Andrea Bianchi had an amazing career. So many movies to his career. He actually did pass away in 2013. An Italian director, really prolific in the 70s and 80s. So of course, Burial Ground, which I think is definitely the best thing he's probably ever done. There are a lot of his films I have not seen, and I know I have seen other ones, but I really need to take a deep dive and to check out his other films. But Burial Ground is so damn good that it for me it puts him on the map automatically as like just one of the best directors. He also directed Strip Nude for Your Killer in 1975, which looks really awesome. What the Peeper Saw 72. These films look incredibly sleazy. Confessions of a Frustrated Housewife. in '76. Looks super awesome. City of a Prostitute in 1974. Naughty Teen in 1977. The Seduction of Angela in 1986. Logita in '89. Um, Also, Fleshy Doll in '81. Massacre in '89. Yeah, really cool. Treasure Island in '72. Maniac Killer in '81. Angel of Death in '85. Angel of Death, actually, I own that movie. That movie, I believe, was written by Jess Franco, one of the greatest directors in the world of exploitation. Angel of Death, so that's super awesome. I love that fucking movie. I have a really great Blu-ray edition of that movie. Um, Hot Laps in 1993. Possession of a Teenager. I mean, just so damn good. He was born. Andrea Bianchi was born in Rome in 1925. But Andrea Bianchi died in 2013. But what a legacy! He's really was really known for the Seduction of Angela in '86, which I have not seen. I've seen a couple of his other films, and again, like I said, I do have Angel of Death on Blu-ray, which is such a badass movie, such a great film. But man, Burial Ground, I don't know. It's he Andrew Bianchi just knocked it out of the fucking park with Burial Ground. You know, I have like a long history with that film because I did see it a bunch of times when I was a kid on VHS, and to get it now on Blu-ray, I think I've had it for maybe 2 years. It's just so awesome. I mean, you're really getting the full the full Monty, if you will. So Andrew Bianchi, yeah, check him out. Any of his films are going to be awesome, but especially Burial Ground, amazing. It's a masterpiece. It might be my favorite zombie movie ever made. Peace. We'll see you soon.